You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with me today is Mr. Jim Atkins from Ardella. Thank you. Mr. Mike Goldberg from Delmar. Thank you both.
Good morning, sir.
So we did the show on Monday about what was in the briefing book for the MOA with ICE and the county. We hopefully debunked some of the myth behind whether or not it was with the sheriff's office and whether the council should be involved. We did get to see the work session Tuesday night. There was also over 2 hours of public comments. I counted them up. A little over 60% were, because some weren't even about the ICE agreement, but a little over 60% were against the 287G in any form. There were a few folks that spoke out in favor of it, but I think everybody just wanted more information. I don't think we got it, did we?
No, we didn't. It was the most incoherent presentation I think I've ever heard. Clearly, the executive, the law department, and ICE, they're not on the same page right now. There's so many open questions as to how any agreements will be structured, who's going to be involved. This stuff should have been settled before they went in there, but it was a clown show.
Well, you have the problem, which was stated during the work session by the executive several times. We've changed our mind. We've changed our mind. We've gone in a different direction.
First of all, in listening to everybody, there seems to be a lot of misinformation out there, so I'm really happy that Peter was able to join us. So he'll be able to sort of fill in on the specific details. But just to give a timeline of events, so Sheriff Lewis brought this to us, or to my office back in July. He kind of did a whole press release on the fact that he was interested in partnering with ICE and the 287G program. The original program that we looked at, or the model that we looked at, was the JEM model, which is the jail enforcement model. And I can go into what that is, but just for time's sake purposes, that wasn't something that we were able to do. We were interested in it, but we just don't have the staffing. We don't have the staffing at our correctional facility, and our sheriff's deputies just weren't able to staff it the way that it needed to be done. So we looked, we knew that Sheriff Lewis wasn't interested in the task enforcement model, which seems to be what a lot of people are fearful of. That's going out on the streets, our deputies acting as ICE agents. That's not what we were interested in at all. And so actually Peter did a really great job at providing the information on the warrant service officer model. So the goal of that program is for deputies or correctional officers who work in the detention center to serve the warrant of arrest and detainer on the alien when they are released by the commissioner, either on PR or bond, and have completed the sentence of their local charges. So what that means is that the people that are being served this detainer are those individuals that are already incarcerated. They are not on the streets, they are not in our schools, they're not working, they are already incarcerated. These people also are on ICE's radar. Deputies would then step in at this point in time, they would serve the detainer, and then they are kept for up to 48 hours in our correctional facility until ICE is able to come and do the proper vetting.
The public wouldn't know that you've changed your mind 4 times if every time you had a meeting, you didn't run out to a television camera or a newspaper to put an article out about what we're going to do. Figure out what you're going to do, talk about it, then tell the people about it.
She hoodwinked Congressman Andy Harris.
Yes.
He congratulated us on having an MOU with ICE.
Yes.
We don't even know what kind of model we have, and she did it. What I want to do is I want to bring in Bob Taylor. Now, Bob used to be the county council's attorney, and I want to get his legal perspective of what he saw, because definitely the county attorney, Andrew Illuminati, and the current council's attorney, Bob Benson, were not on the same page. No. So I think we can cut through a little bit of that with Bob. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to bring in Bob Taylor, former attorney for the county council, and ask him about the work session from Tuesday night. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with me now is Mr. Bob Taylor from Salisbury.
Hello.
Thank you. Thanks for sticking around, Mr. Mike Goldberg. Well, we want to talk about the work session from last Tuesday's meeting about the ICE MOA with the county executive, and it was presented at the county council meeting after their legislative session. And Bob, I want to ask you, they finally had this work session in October when this whole process started back in July. Does the county council need to sign this MOA?
No, well, I don't have to. In fact, there's no signature line on it for the council.
Okay.
And in my opinion, and I think in Robert Benson, who's the council attorney, his opinion is that the council doesn't need to do anything.
Okay.
For the executive branch, that would be, of course, Ms. Giordano to make the agreement and for the county to perform it.
And and I guess the only other thing that we had questions about is in reading this MOA, the charter is silent on open-ended memorandums of agreement. So if it's a one-year agreement, I can sign it without council. If it's a multi-year agreement, you guys, you vote on it and then I sign it. This is open-ended. So that is why, we have questions. We spoke to the county attorney. He felt that it needed to come in front of council, but obviously that's ultimately council's decision with their council as well.
The council's decision to what?
To go for, like, if you guys are going to do a resolution on this, whether a yes or no, I don't know. The charter is silent on an open-ended memorandum.
What does your legal department say? I mean, the county legal department,
Right.
not necessarily Mr. Benson's responsibility.
Sure.
It's council's.
No, it's not just Mr. Benson, but he usually has an opinion, so I figured he would chime in. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Andrew Illuminati, Department of Law. So I think the historical approach to this is really important and how we analyze whether council's approval is necessary. As the county executive said, no end date is not addressed in county code or county charter. However, in the past year, purely executive functions, county vehicles, meeting time of the planning commission, operation of the landfill, actions were taken, and then council says, we weren't involved. From the time the sheriff announced it, the recommendation has been to work openly to get a consensus from council to move in this direction, because had the authorization been, you don't need council's approval, I would not have wanted to see legislation saying all MOAs with the federal government require council approval going forward. So in the spirit of transparency, cooperativeness, from every council meeting, saying from the moment public, and this is a huge decision for the public.
The amount of misinformation on this is absolutely staggering.
I disagree.
The amount of contradiction is staggering.
I disagree.
The press releases, the radio interviews, every time somebody gets in front of a microphone, something different is said. We've got it all documented here. As I said earlier in my council comments, we don't even know what's up at this point because so much different stuff has been laid out there.
Councilman Merritt,
and
you've had every opportunity to reach out to the
do me a
sheriff
favor.
of this
Excuse
county.
me. Excuse me, right now, please, before we
Excuse
get
me.
anywhere else, we don't interrupt people here. Let him finish.
John, we're having an open
you.
discussion.
Let him finish. I'm not done.
Okay.
We are not responsible for this. You've said so multiple times, multiple interviews. We've got it all right here.
Okay.
So, have you now changed your mind?
Jeff, this is not about changing a mind. What happened is that I did not think that the council had to be involved because it's not a multi-year deal. Per our charter, which I stated, doesn't have us doing anything with you with a multi-year deal. So whether it's the sheriff signing onto it or me just signing it, did not involve council.
The memorandum of agreement is with the Wycomico County Department of Corrections. And in the MOU or MOA, the Wycomico County Department of Corrections is the law enforcement agency And the law enforcement agency, which is the Department of Corrections, supplies the personnel to be trained. That's what it says.
I understand.
My understanding is that the sheriff is going to supply personnel in addition, and they're going to be the actual ones doing the service. But they don't have an MOA, at least we haven't been provided with one, and they're not authorized to be trained, and they're not going to be a recognized law enforcement agency under the MOA.
The gentleman from ICE is here. I mean, I think he's,
Mr. McCurry.
because that will also
Yes.
get that solidified on the record.
Yeah, it would be nice to know if your agency does plan to have an MOA with both the Sheriff's Department as well as the Department of Corrections.
No, sir. Just with the Department of Corrections.
What's the role of the sheriff's office in this MOA?
Well, in this particular MOA, they don't have any role at all.
Okay.
Because they're not a party to it.
Yeah.
Now, whether they would be somehow involved in serving the warrants once it goes into effect, that's a possibility, I guess. I don't know how they're going to handle that. I couldn't really tell from the discussion.
But in the brief book, Mike, and we discussed this on Monday's show, the MOA is actually with the ICE and the Department of Corrections. And we did see Miss Tyler, who's is she the executive or the?
She's the warden, I believe.
Yeah. She was at the work session and she did not speak very much. But this agreement would actually run through her, correct?
That's my understanding. However, there were deputy sheriffs there to witness this. It sounds pretty clear that the executive wants the sheriff's department to be involved. So how that would be structured remains to be ascertained. It's very unclear. Perhaps the detention center or the Department of Corrections would have to sign an agreement with the sheriff's department. I don't know the answer to this.
And they talked about that. They said that there would probably have to be another MOA or MOU with the Department of Corrections and the Sheriff's Department. And I do think this is where Jim Atkins had brought up in Monday's show that this is not a cost-neutral proposition because ultimately the Sheriff's Department is going to have to do some work as corrections officers.
Can I interrupt just at one point? I understand that the MOA lists on it as the party being the Department of Corrections. However, it's really the county. The Department of Corrections is not a separate legal entity. It's part of the county. And that's why the signature on it is for Ms. Giordano as the county executive.
But the sheriff's department is separate from the county.
Yes.
It's a constitutional office.
That's correct.
And I have to wonder how you put deputy sheriffs under the authority of the Department of Corrections, since it's a separate constitutional office. I think there's a lot of legal questions that are being raised here, and clearly they have not presented how this agreement or agreements, if it requires an additional MOU, how they're actually going to be structured and if it'll pass the legal sniff test.
It didn't seem like even the county executive really understood. And she said at one point, we've changed our mind. And I think maybe more than once, Vice President Merritt pointed this out. But talking about the legal side of this, the legal opinion, we heard a very strong-worded statement from Andrew Illuminati, who's one of the county attorneys, works for the executive's office. Bob, I want to ask you, his statement really kind of made it seem like he was just putting it on the council. They needed to decide whether or not they should even be involved.
It's either a purely executive function, and Mr. Benson's interpretation of the agreement has zero merit whatsoever because he is solely advising the council, or it's a collaborative event in which council is going to authorize the county executive to enter into the MOA. It cannot be both, where the county's council's attorney says, that's not how I interpret it, but the county council is not voting or authorizing the county executive to sign it.
So with all due respect, this is it's supposed to be an open work session to provide information to the council and to the public, and we're trying to figure out what the agreement is. And that's what we're trying to ask questions about, and I don't think you have any answers. And if if ICE wants to say that the sheriff is covered, then they can give the county a letter saying that they will provide the same protections to the sheriff's agencies under this MOA that they provide the Department of Corrections, but they're not doing that.
Mr. Mercurio, would that be a resolution for you or for your agency?
No, sir. How it works is the nominations will come from Mrs. Giordano.
Right?
Yeah, I don't think you could possibly honor that by saying that was a legal opinion. To me, it was kind of a stream of consciousness type statement, trying to somehow, like you say, impugn the county council by saying that they had been vocal about certain other things in the past, the landfill, the safari at the quarry, which were completely different matters.
Yeah.
I think Robert Benson did give what I would consider to be.
Section 4A says approve participating law enforcement personnel. The only law enforcement personnel are corrections officers. So you can't read Section B without reading Section A. And under this MOA, the only law enforcement agency is the Department of Corrections, and the sheriff's deputies are not personnel of the Department of Corrections. So it seems to me that whether you want to approve it or don't approve it, or it gets signed or doesn't, there needs to be two separate MOAs, one with the Sheriff's Department and one with the Corrections Department. And in particular, because there's a section in here that talks about liability and responsibility, and the law enforcement agency personnel will be treated as federal employees, but the Sheriff's Department are not law enforcement agency personnel because they're not part of the Department of Corrections. So in order to protect the Sheriff's Department, the county, you've got to have an MOA with both the Department of Corrections and the Sheriff.
But that's your opinion, and when I talked to ICE, they didn't feel that way. So
I don't care what ICE thinks. We're protecting the county, not.
Okay.
Not.
That's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, what we're doing is, when we were doing this, is we are listening to the experts, the ones that have done this, with the different agencies. So I guess when we sit here and say law enforcement agency, correctional officers are not law enforcement.
He had read the charter and the code, and he doesn't see, nor do I, that there's any need for the county council to do anything in order for Ms. Giordano to sign the MOA that was in the briefing book for them to participate with ICE. Now, the things that Mr. Goldberg has mentioned about what's the sheriff's office going to do, that's a sub-question to that, but that doesn't affect her ability to sign the agreement. That's something else. And it was interesting because when they asked the fellow from ICE, who was on the Zoom video, he kind of threw it back to them.
He really did.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was kind of a tennis match there for a while.
I got the sense that the county executive was hoping that he would somehow support her position. And let's talk about her position. It wavered throughout the meeting, and then she even got to a point where she was constantly talking over folks, and she had to get gavelled down by the president of the council, John Cannon, right?
Yeah, that happened, yes.
So, I mean, and my sense from sitting in the audience was they came there unprepared, even ask a lot of questions or answer a lot of questions. And I say they, like the county executives team, because the county council really has had no involvement up to this point. Up until Tuesday, they, other than sending an email and getting some answers back, maybe a month ago, they didn't know, and the process has changed. I want to talk about just how did they leave it, because it seemed like President Cannon did not actually take the time to get a consensus to continue to move forward on this, but he kind of forced one through.
Well, the whole thing was bizarre, and the ending was too. And he sort of said to the executive branch, "We'll come back with a resolution for us to consider." Well, there was never any real polling of the council to what they wanted to do. So I don't see that they reached any consensus, unless you consider silence to be consensus, and I don't. I think you have to express something before you have a consensus. Mr. Holloway kind of interrupted towards the end there and said, "Well, what are we asking for a resolution for? We haven't decided anything." But that fell on deaf ears, and it ended with him, Mr. Cannon, saying, "Come back with a resolution." I mean, that's bizarre.
Nobody there was able to explain what they're doing coherently because they don't have a coherent approach. Everything's a moving target.
I think the ultimate goal, especially by the county executive, is to get a political victory here. Any way you can get one.
No doubt.
And I've said before, the warrant service officer model is, I have interest in us pursuing that, but I still want to have the government be transparent and address the fears. I mean, 2 hours of public comments, and over half of them were folks who were very much against it. The opposite view that I might have. So there has to be some consideration for their concerns, but that wasn't what the topic of the work session was.
And at least in my view, and what I've been saying here, is I'm not against necessarily an agreement with ICE.
Yes.
Particularly the warrant service officers model. But it's the procedure and the process that's been displayed. And what I think you've mentioned, her trying to somehow bring the council in to this to say, well, it's not really just me doing it, it's the council too.
Because it wasn't just her, it was the sheriff.
yeah,
but then it's also the Department of Corrections. So
Well, if it blows up somehow, then I believe that the executive wants to be able to put the council out to dry. She wants to be able to share the culpability if this doesn't work out very well.
Well, thank you both. I appreciate you being there, just like I was, and giving your perspective and coming on and talking about that. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to bring back in Jim Atkins, and we're going to talk about the conclusion of the meeting. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Back in the studio with us is Mr. Jim Atkins from Ardella. Thank you. Mike, thanks for sticking around.
You betcha.
So we got a chance to hear what Bob Taylor had to say. We were all at the meeting Tuesday night, and it was nice to have a former county council attorney give us that angle. But we can take the angle as concerned citizens. You're at almost every meeting. We attend or watch on PAC 14 almost every meeting. Did you get the sense that enough information was given out at the work session that you could start to feel a little bit better about this process, or do you still feel the same or even worse?
No, I basically still feel the same. There are so many unanswered questions out there. I think one of the most interesting questions that I don't think any of us had ever thought about was asked by Councilman Merritt, and that was whether the county insurance company had been consulted, because they're going to have to insure the county against liability.
There was some misinformation that was put out at the work session that we covered on our Monday show. One of them was about the responsibility of the liability. Mike, you talked about, during that extra 48 hours that we're holding them, ultimately the county is responsible for these detainees. And Jim, you talked about that there's also a clause in the MOA that's in the briefing book that they supposedly talked about Tuesday night that says that if these officers are needed elsewhere, Baltimore, California, or even need to transport the detainees, that we're on the hook for that.
Yes.
Did you find it odd that the county executive dug her heels in and about this being a neutral cost of?
A lot of misinformation that is out there is the cost that the county will bear. So the way that we have worked this out with the sheriff's office and with corrections, it's basically budget neutral. It is not costing the taxpayers anything. These things the deputies already do. They already serve warrants. That's literally part of their job. Our correctional officers already hold people in our correctional facility. So they are literally doing their job on the clock. So it is budget neutral.
I think that was entirely disingenuous. Either she wasn't being forthright or she simply has failed to analyze what the risks are. She's not a risk analyst.
Yeah.
Well, not only is she not a risk analyst, she's not a business person. When they want to say that the employees are working anyway, so, it's no additional cost. Well, there is an additional cost because the employee that is supposed to be in the detention center working is sitting in a classroom now for 8 hours. The person who has to cover that shift is covering it overtime. So you're now paying one person straight time to be in a class and one person time and a half to be in the detention center.
Yeah.
You are spending money. And if you were writing the check out of your personal account to pay this salary, you would realize there's a additional account. But when you have the county paying your bills for you, You don't have a clue.
And this allocation of human
They were, I mean, in the MOA, it does say that the county is responsible for having interpreters. When they were having the work session, the answer from the county executives team was, well, we have them there anyway. But does that mean that they're just sitting around waiting for something?
I think
No.
they're contracted. I can't say that with all certainty, but the chances are they don't have a team of interpreters, from the Russian language to Chinese, waiting around in the back room sipping coffee. They're going to be contract people. So to say that this is cost neutral, is
absurd.
just.
Well, I think the least amount of cost involved would be with the interpreters, because the county does have, because of the 911 center, certain interpreters. Majority of them are Haitian.
And you know this because you work there.
Yes, and these people are county people that if you get a Haitian caller on 911, you're able to contact them. But the county also has it's called language line, and you dial that number and tell them what language you want, and they have somebody there.
Okay. So it's just done through the phone.
Yeah, so you hand the person the phone, and
Is that a free service?
I'm sure. No, I'm sure the county pays for it, but it's a service that's already in place with the 911 center. So I don't think there's going to be an much added cost on that. One of the most interesting things that I heard the other night, and I agree with this 100%, and it came from the spokesman for ICE when he was asked, what happens if we don't sign this agreement? And he stated, well, things just stay the same as they are now.
Yeah.
And your classic example that we have spoken about, and we spoke about on Monday, is you had a gentleman yesterday that was involved in a motor vehicle accident in Wycomico County. And when the police got there to investigate the motor vehicle accident, he had an active warrant for, I believe, Arizona or Montana, somewhere out in the Midwest. Well, that's how this works. Okay, He had an accident, but he's got a warrant, so guess where he went?
Yeah.
He's
going to end up back in Arizona.
Yeah, he's in a detention center waiting to see whether or not they want him back.
But they talked about the time frame. If without this agreement, they're holding them for 6 hours is the max they can hold them for. That's what they said. With the agreement, it's 48. So what we're doing is signing an MOA, adding additional liability, stretching thin our already very thin Department of Corrections staff to add 42 hours for the federal government while we're paying the bill. We need to know how much this should cost. And no one can answer that question.
And we do, and we don't know the answer to that. But I also have to question, is it even necessary? And I spoke about this at the council meeting. Is there actually a problem? Is there more volume of work for ICE than they can handle? And based on some conversations I've had, there may not be, and I can't say that definitively, but if we just go back or keep things as they are now, do we really have a problem out there?
No.
I mean, do we have rampant crime around here in Salisbury, Princess Anne, ECI? That's being committed by illegal aliens.
Well, and you don't know they're illegal aliens until they commit a crime and they're arrested. So I mean, you have no thing. One of the final things I want to throw in here is the fear mongering that hopefully people noticed, not only from public speakers, but from a particular council member, that if you don't sign on to this agreement, you're going to have the National Guard in the streets, just like in these other cities. The National Guard's not going to be in the street.
You're talking about James Wynn brought that
Exactly.
up. And James has proven time and time again to align his political votes and his views with the county executive. Not that don't get along well with him, but he is hand in hand with what she's doing. So thank you both. I appreciate you coming in. So thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back later this week with another new episode.
It's 22 degrees Celsius in Salisbury, Maryland this morning, and the time is 9:35. Now for traffic and news.